Have you ever had the sense that none of this is real? That life is some weird trip? How lost can you feel? Do you remember the time you could sense the freedom of life in a space so immense? If you felt sad, you simply cried. Happiness or fear, nothing denied. But we have collected some silly ideas, entrenched in our thoughts about what it all means. This prison of me, how I am or should be. We forgot it's a play, a dramatic comedy, but it's just pretense. You're still that innocent. You don't fit in a box. What a paradox. We just pretend we have forgotten who we are. In my self-created world, I am the #1 superstar. My pretentious castle has been built on the clouds, but it doesn't bring me safety. It can bring only more doubts, but I don't know how else to survive in this strange place. 'Cause I don't know who I am, and I don't know any other way. It can seem depressing, this meaningless life. It takes your ambitions, your goals and your drive. But truth is the freedom to be everything. Thought is the servant, but you are the king. It is a great relief to get the joke of it. There's nothing to achieve, 'cause this is it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's lovely to see you all. So today's open webinar is on the theme of the question, the great question, who am I? So we'll start first of all by a short guided meditation. So you just get comfortable and close your eyes. Take some deep breaths. With the emphasis on the exhale, just breathing out any tension, any worries, any dramas that were happening in your life before joining this session. And with each breath, really allowing yourself to be fully present here, giving yourself the gift of presence. The gift of meeting yourself just the way you are right now. Noticing any sensations or emotions, just noticing them all just as they arise and fall away, as the attention shifts from one sensation to another, or then to the thinking, the commentary about whatever is happening. Anytime the attention drifts off into a dream, a story of one day, what if or what was, you just gently bring it back to this present experience right now. Nothing to do. Simply notice what is here. No special experience is needed. Just meeting the ordinary sensations, the ordinary experience, just as it is. Noticing the breath just the way it is. Noticing the sounds. Meeting this experience just the way it is. Nothing is needed to be fixed or changed or added. Simply meeting it as it is already. And as we are silent and just simply noticing what is here, let's now introduce this question: who am I? So as we ask this question, let's just notice what happens in us. Who am I? Just notice if there are any particular thoughts that come with a story of me or my life. Or perhaps there are thoughts that come with various spiritual concepts that you've picked up, that perhaps you assume is the answer to this question. Who am I? Notice if there are any particular feelings, sensations that come with this question in your experience. How does it feel when you ask yourself, who am I? And ask yourself this question absolutely fresh, as if you've never heard it before. Who am I right now? Without referring to any thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes. Who am I right now? And whatever comes for you in your experience when you ask this question, we just acknowledge it. It is absolutely fine, just the way it is, whatever comes in your experience. And now let's just let it all go again. Any so-called answers to this question, just let it go. In fact, we let everything go, even the question. And we come back to this experience right now, sitting here. The breath. The sensations of the bum on the seat, feet on the ground. The sound of my voice, or any other background sounds. And when you're ready, you can open our eyes. So this question, who am I? Of course, if you are on the spiritual path, which I presume if you're watching this or you've joined this webinar that you obviously are, it starts with this question. It's the most fundamental question. I know in my own personal experience, way before I ever heard of any kind of spiritual path, I was already asking myself, who am I? Who am I? And what the hell is going on here in this life? How did I get here? Why am I here? What am I doing here? What am I here for? It all boils down to this question of who am I? And of course, the mind wants to answer. The mind wants to come with all kinds of perfect answers to this question. And it starts with, of course, the story of me in my life, my story of my past and my future, and my timeline of how I'm moving. I'm someone moving on this timeline from the past into the future. And what I have endured in the past, the wounds, the traumas, the beauty and the suffering. And what I hope to achieve into the future, my goals, my fears, this whole timeline of me. So the thoughts start to answer like that. And then maybe at a certain point we question this and we say, well, actually, I'm not this story. I know for me, it became even more obvious when I heard myself in social situations telling my story of what I was doing, where I came from, what I like, what I don't like. And it started to feel more and more painful because it felt so obvious that I am not just the story that I tell. I'm not the me that I'm talking about. I'm not a collection of experiences or events, hopes and fears and dreams. I'm not that. I'm so much more. But then if the mind starts to look for what is this much more, then, okay, we go on to spiritual concepts. We hear that I am not my body. And yet it's very confusing because the body is still here. And the experience is, it seems, of looking out of these eyes as if I'm inside this body and I'm looking out. And then we pick up other spiritual concepts. I am consciousness, I am oneness, I am wholeness. And of course, these are all true, but when we pick them up just as concepts, then they're just another story, another beautiful story, but still a story. So we can change the story from a more mundane story to a more special spiritual story, but it's still the story of me. So if we don't refer to the thinking, so the thinking wants to answer this question, and everything that the thinking comes with is another story. It's another story of me. And I am not that, and I'm not that, and I'm not that. Whatever story, whatever concept the thinking comes with, I'm continually not that. So then if we don't refer to the thinking, because we know I'm not that, and I'm not that, and I'm not that, then the question is, well, who am I then? If I'm not all these stories, how do I know the answer to this question? And the problem with this question is that it's a bit of a trick question, because usually we are assuming that with any answer that with any question that there should be an answer. And with this question, there isn't an answer in the way that we usually assume that there is. There isn't an answer in the thinking, in a concept, in an idea about me. Because if there was, you would be then limited to this particular story, this particular concept, which would feel very limiting. And that's the problem with every story that we tell about me, is that it feels limited. I'm not just this, I'm also this, and this, and this, and this. I'm unlimited, in fact. But as soon as we start to speak about who I am really, every word can be taken as another story, another concept. So really, this question cannot be answered by the thinking. It simply cannot be. And how do we then not refer to the thinking when we ask this question? We may notice that thinking comes with potential answers, but we don't refer to them. We say, thank you very much, thinking. I really appreciate all your answers, all your efforts, but I'm not referring to you right now. I want to check what is really true beyond all these thoughts and concepts and stories. So then the thinking can go blah, 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 blah. And yet there's a waiting, a receptivity, an openness, a not knowing. Not knowing in thinking. And at first, nothing happens. There can even be more confusion in the thinking. Perhaps if you had some hope that something special would happen with this question, especially when we hear about great masters who asked this question and then suddenly they had this amazing experience of awakening, everything changed. So if you have an expectation like that, let's not refer to that either, because that's also a thought, a belief. We just stay with the ordinary experience, with this question: who am I? When I don't refer to my thoughts. Nothing. I mean, even that word nothing, right? It's not that. Every word is wrong. Every word that I've put in that gap is not it. So we could stay silent, but it's not even the experience of silence. The best I can do really is to say what it's not. So we keep stripping away whatever a thought wants to put in that gap. As soon as it tries, we say, no, it's not that. It's an endless free-falling in not knowing, in not understanding, in not limiting who I am. A gap. And nothing needs to fill it. And this is who you are. Nothing needs to fill this gap, because this gap is enough. This gap is who you are. We hear metaphors like the blank screen on which it all happens. And this is a beautiful metaphor. Of course, when the mind gets hold of it, turns it into some imagination, which is not that. But it is the blank, the emptiness, the nothingness. No answer to this question. And of course, the mind goes on trying to fill the gap. Whether it's the mind or whether it's also even sensations. There can be all kinds of sensations that come up in that gap. And they change and they change. And you notice it all. But still, the gap is unfilled. Open, an endless opening, boundless. This question, who am I, is a support in a way, a lifeline from Ramana Maharshi or other teachers, masters who recommend that you ask this question. Because there is really no way to help spiritual seekers when they long to wake up to who they are. The best that we can say is ask yourself who you are, because this gets to the root of it. This gets to the core of it. But most of the time, this question is taken to be a practice that you should practice. People assume that in order to wake up or be free or come to some perfect spiritual experience, that you need to ask yourself this question of who am I, again and again. And perhaps each time you ask that question, you might have an experience where the thinking quietens down, maybe in a sense of expansion. But this question as a practice can become just like any practice that generates a beautiful experience. But then when you don't practice this, the experience passes. And I know many spiritual seekers have become almost addicted to asking this question. And essentially, this question is not meant to be asked even more than once. If you ask it most sincerely and authentically, you only ever need to really ask once. Maybe you ask again 2, 3 more times just to double check. But it's not meant to be a practice. It's not meant to be a way of soothing yourself in an uncomfortable experience. Not meant to be a way of changing an uncomfortable experience to a more pleasant one. It's about getting to who you are beyond all experience. Acknowledging that there is no answer to this question. And yet there is a knowing in not knowing. And this knowing, this is what I've been saying is the gap, it's the emptiness from which it is all seen. All known. But this can't be understood or grasped by the mind. The best that the mind can do is say, I don't know. Now, I'd love to hear from you. So if you have any questions about what I've been speaking about, if you would like to have a dialogue, just raise your hand. You can also type a question in the chat, and I'll get to that towards the end. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, hi, Armani. Yeah. Yeah, I hesitated because beginning to speak, I feel so stupid after your introduction, because what is there to say? It is that you said it's now your turn to speak, that I felt the invitation, because otherwise what could I have done else but remain silent? Really, and I want to really thank you for your profound introduction to this theme. I almost disappeared in the attention. Yeah, and you leave us with nothing, even because any question is a denial of what you have just said before. So how do I do this?
Yeah, the mind struggles with this and can
Yeah.
become frustrating or confusing when the mind is trying to understand or get it or do it.
Yeah.
And then all you can do is just feel that frustration or confusion or whatever is touched in you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe the best thing I can navigate on is when you asked the question, who are you and what do you feel then? And I immediately, even before your question, I felt this stirring in my heart. And there was also fear arising in that stirring, in our not even knowing what that is even. So I don't know even what to do with observing those sensations in the heart, or pointing to the sensations there as if it was fear, because I cannot do anything with it, because doing anything is referring to the mind.
There's no need to do anything.
Yeah.
Here to be felt,
Yeah.
to be met. That's all. That's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And before I tried to be smart in preparing for this meeting, and how do we then, is there a way to investigate if there is a me inside? But that is, after listening to you, that's also pointless.
Look, investigating, there's nothing wrong with it, of course. You can always, in a particular situation, if you notice that you are feeding some old belief in me, or you're defending a me story, you can investigate and ask yourself, what am I, who is this? But it's the expectation that that investigation is going to create some beautiful experience, peace and love and wholeness, that causes a lot of trouble. It is wonderful to keep investigating this life endlessly. And if you can see through some of these beliefs in these separate me's that arise, you'll notice that there's a lot more lived freedom in your daily experience. Because each time you see that I am not this me story, you can have a little laugh, and there's a release of energy. And you come back to what is simple, what is real, what is present.
Yes. But I'm so much looking for a landing place, a place where I finally arrive in knowing who I am, in, let's say, in a deeper level, really homecoming, in forgetting all this stuff about this man, and really living in who I truly am. But even what you say is becoming more human instead of becoming.
Yeah, it goes together. More human only can really happen when you see that who you really are is untouchable. You cannot be touched by the human experience. So all that is left is to be totally touched in this human experience. And this is the paradox. In recognizing that who you are is that.
And that really is beautiful, being totally touched in my humanity or recognizing myself in any other human being. That is amazingly wonderful when felt or experienced. Yeah. Okay, yeah, you can go on and on, but I leave it here. Thank you so much.
Who else? See that Dennis, you've written, when I was in college many years ago, I found a book titled Zen Buddhism on a bench and opened it to a page that discussed the koan, who am I? A light went on, and that's when my path of awakening started. I took the book home, no questions, just listen. Lovely, thank you. Lisetta. Hi.
Hi. So I take on board what Peter's saying, and it's engaging the mind, and that's not really in asking the questions. But my question is around when you are speaking, who is speaking? Are you forgetting your? I mean, yeah.
Go on, ask that part of the question as well.
Are you forgetting your true nature, your true self? And somehow, so it's the mind that's engaged, that's asking this question, somehow diving back into the human to ask the question, to speak. How is speech happening?
Yeah, well, the second part, I can say nothing is ever forgotten because nothing is ever remembered. So it's not held in the mind. So anything can happen. Speaking can happen, dancing can happen, living can happen. Human stuff goes on. And yeah, who is speaking? I am. I, as in you. There's no separation. And I speak from and as that. So I'm not, although the words and the concepts are being used to speak, and the speaking is happening through this human and through her filters, her body, mind, expressions, you know, it's filtered through all of that. But this human is in service to that. So part of the recognition of who I really am, beyond who I think I am, is recognizing that the thinking, as we've said earlier, the thinking cannot know this. And this puts the thinking back in its place. In other words, it becomes a servant rather than the one in charge. It becomes a tool for being in the world. And so whether it's the thinking or whether it's the words or even these hands moving or even the whole of this human life, it becomes a servant. It's used by life itself, awareness itself, or who I really am. So I, as in you, I am watching this show right now of this woman speaking and her moving her hands and the sounds and the sensations and everything that's happening. I'm watching, and she's kind of being moved like a puppet. She's not in charge, she's not in control of anything. So, and I just want one more thing to add to that, is that it's the same with you. It's the same with everybody, really, ultimately. It's just that most people have the idea that I am located in here and the world is outside of me and I have control over my life. I can navigate and negotiate. And in recognizing who I am, waking up out of the dream, there's seeing that I'm not all that I thought I was. I understand that, in hearing this, when you hear it through the thinking, when the thinking is trying to understand or do something with what I'm saying, I'm not saying that that's what's happening for you now, but just to say that when this is filtered through the thinking, it can be heard as if I'm suggesting that you need to become something other than you are. But actually, that's not what I'm saying. I'm simply describing how it is already, not just for me personally as this Unmani person, but how it is already for you. And so all that you need to do is recognize that. It's hear the ringing bell in what I'm pointing to. And it's a ringing bell because you already are this. You already know this. It's nothing new. Dennis.
I do have a question. I've had many of these sort of glimpses of reality from a different viewpoint, and some very profound. And recently I had one that was like the most profound, but they don't last long. My question is do you think it's helpful to revisit those, like to just sit with those in mind, just to see what comes of it? That's helpful. It's not like really like trying to get it back or trying to remember it. I mean, you are remembering it, but you're just like going into that space. And I feel compelled to do that because they're so amazing. But usually what happens is some kind of different insight will pop up. But yeah, that's my question. Do you think that's helpful?
Look, you know, there's nothing that can help, really. So why not? You know, if you enjoy doing that, then yeah, sure, do it. You know, it's the thing is that you don't need help. Your experience, just as it is perfect. And in a way, the problem is that you don't see that, or not necessarily you personally, but you know, the majority people don't see that actually the way it is actually really perfect. So when we have these experiences or glimpses, what you recognize in the midst of that is that perfection. It's all as it's meant to be. Right? It's all, you know, that's that sense of expansion and peace and wholeness that you feel. That's how you feel when everything is fine, when there's no problem. There's a sense of ease in that.
Maybe it's just natural to want that back, but they all arose spontaneously when I was doing something else, you know, and something would trigger it, you know, some words or just a moment where the mind goes blank, and then it's there.
Yeah.
In fact, the last time that this happened, someone said, just focus on what's always here. And my mind just went there. And then I had that moment. So,
look, you know, when you have an experience or experiences like that, they're so lovely that, of course, like you say, you want them back, and ideally you'd like it to be a permanent experience. But the nature of experience, as you may have noticed, is that it is constantly changing, and that's just how it is. So when we have an idea that it should always be one particular experience that we like, then we're kind of trying to change water to be dry. You know, it cannot be like that. The experience will always change. And when it changes, so what? It's an idea that it's changing for me, or I've lost something, or I've got something that is special for me. You know? It's only the belief in a me, in a separate entity, that believes that any particular experience means something about me or to me. Who you really are as that awareness of it all that is blank, empty. It doesn't care what experience you have. You can have an experience of bliss, great, enjoy, or you can be suffering. And that's painful, but still, who you really are has no preference, no opinion for one experience or another. That's why I
Right.
say nothing can help you, you know, because you're not trying to fix your experience here. That's not the idea here. It's about seeing who you are beyond experience. So you can play with experiences if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a game.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see, Maria, you've written, what is the difference between animals and human beings? What is helpful for our mind to liberate in true freedom? Is it so that animals are free as we should be? Oh, is it so? I guess, yes. What's the difference between animals and human beings? Well, I mean, it seems that human beings have the gift of this mind, right? This kind of intellectual mind. It can be a gift, and it also can cause a lot of suffering, which animals, we can only presume, don't have. Yeah, and of course the suffering of the human mind is that we take ourselves to be separate from nature, from the rest of life. But even with animals, they have survival instincts that play out. And of course, you only need those survival instincts in this play of separation. So even animals are playing this play of separation to some degree as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to interact with each other, or they wouldn't be able to fight for their own survival or run away from a threat. You know, this is all part of the play of separation. It's just that the human mind is more, you could say, more sophisticated in terms of these kind of survival mechanisms. You know, because we are playing this game of separation also intellectually, psychologically, emotionally. Yeah, but the bottom line is that we are just the same as animals. You know, essentially, our true nature is no different. Whether it's animals, plants, trees, nature, objects, this laptop. It's all essentially appearing in and as who I really am. It's all a play of life happening in who I am. I, as that, I am watching the show of whatever is here. Now the play, within this play, there is the play of humans waking up to their true nature and living consciously. And that is a big gift that we have, that it seems that animals don't go through that journey of living consciously, knowing that my true nature is that unlimited boundlessness. I would say that animals, there's a knowing of that, but it's not a conscious knowing. And the gift of having this human mind is that we can consciously acknowledge it. And then there's a process of integrating that happens in the human experience, and discovering how this is lived more and more. Whereas animals are living it naturally, of course, they always are, and yet it's not conscious. Is that what we asked? What is helpful for our mind to liberate in true freedom? Well, as I said, nothing really can help. I would say the only thing that can help in a way is seeing that the mind can't do it. The mind can't get it. And in order to see and know this for yourself, you have to try to get it. You have to try to know it and fail. You can't just believe me or other teachers when they say that this is not something that the mind can know. You have to actually try for yourself and discover for yourself that it can't be known. And this journey of trying and failing can be very painful, but it seems that we have to go through that in our own experience. So in a way, the problem with listening to teachers saying, describing our true nature, is that we tend to take on these concepts, these non-dual concepts, as if they're already known. And then we deny ourselves this spiritual path of trying to get it, and then failing. And we have to go through that. We have to actually go down every path trying to get it, no matter, whatever we are resonating with. If we feel to go down a particular path, go down there and try as hard as you can to get what you're trying to get, so that you can see for yourself in your own experience that that doesn't help. You have to exhaust the mind. And it's not easy. Essentially, it's easy, but the mind has to discover that and bow down to the true master, which is who you really are. And the only way it can really bow down and become the servant to who you really are is by seeing for itself that it cannot be the boss, it cannot be the true master. It doesn't know how to do it. It doesn't have the answers. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, okay. Thank you for your kind words. But I'm still confusing. You said you are the watcher of the whole show. And then with my mind, I'm searching. I can't do it, but I think, okay, the question, who am I? I am awareness, open awareness. The one who is in connection with all what happens. Boundless, you said, okay. And there's a gap, emptiness.
Yeah, these are all.
But at the same time, I realize I with my mind, I am searching for solutions. And that's not the way.
No, but that's the only thing the mind can do. Right? The mind can't do anything else.
Yeah, but it's still a sort of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels uncomfortable to have that energy, right?
No, not uncomfortable. No, comfortable. It's a nice feeling when I realize how boundless it all is. And
the looking for solutions is uncomfortable.
okay, yes.
Yeah, and this energy of like searching and asking and questioning and confusion, yeah, it's the mind trying to really pin it down. It's this, I want to know, and it can't be known by the mind. So all you're left with really is to feel the discomfort of not being able to understand it. And when you know that you can't understand it, you see that it's been such a joke, this whole spiritual path, really, trying to get somewhere that you've never left. And when you say you're still confused, really, this is a good thing. I know it's not comfortable or easy, but confusion means that the mind hasn't settled into one answer.
Yes, there is no answer.
Exactly. So the confusion of the mind is good, in that it's because if the mind has thought that, okay, I'm not confused, I have a clear answer, I know what it is, I know who I am, this would be the mind limiting again. Right? So the mind can be confused, let it be confused, but you are not that confusion. You are clarity, even when the mind is confused.
And sometimes it seems as if I have moments of feeling, of connecting with that emptiness, there's that feeling of openness, boundless awareness. Is that an answer? I don't know. I don't think it.
In that moment of connecting to that, there's a recognition, you could say.
Recognition. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then in the next moment, the experience of recognition passes.
Yeah.
Something else happens. But what you have recognized didn't pass. The experience changed. Maybe thoughts come back in or whatever, but still in that moment, you recognized that boundless awareness. And that boundless awareness is not an experience.
No? Okay.
It's what is aware of experience.
Aware. Okay, I must think about that.
Well, maybe it also brings me to actually want to say a little bit about experiences of recognition. Because in a way, experiences of recognition or awakening experiences, they are beautiful moments, and they can act like a bridge between the human play, or that horizontal timeline of me moving along in my life, and then you have that moment of recognition, and you recognize the vertical. In that moment, the horizontal recognizes the vertical, and so there's the moment of that experience of recognition is this.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And then the next thing happens, right? So you go on in your horizontal timeline, and so what you've recognized in that moment, you've recognized the vertical, but the vertical doesn't just stay in that moment on the horizontal. The vertical is always here. It's always, you're always this that you recognize. It's just that there are moments in your horizontal timeline where you might have an experience of recognizing it, which is like a bridge between the two. But those experiences, they come and go. They're not the point. The point is that this vertical, this knowing of who you are, it's always here, even if you don't recognize it.
But we don't see it. Okay. Yeah.
It's not an experience. It doesn't fit on the timeline.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with it. The timeline goes along. But the vertical is always here.
Okay.
It doesn't move. So
Thank you.
sometimes the horizontal timeline, you kind of tap into that vertical. But the vertical is still here.
Always. Yes. Yeah.
Experience changes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have a lot to think about.
Don't think too much. Anyone else? Any last questions? Or comments? Anything on the chat? Maria, really helpful. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Well, if there are no more questions for today, then we can wind this up. Just to say that the next webinar will only be in December because we have a retreat coming up here in Portugal in November, the 12th to the 19th of November. And if you would like to join us, there are still places. And if you can't actually come to Portugal, you can also join online. Yeah, really looking forward to diving into an 8-day intensive retreat with a group. I love that. It's my favorite thing to do. Yeah, and yeah, the next webinar, I think, I can't remember the theme, but it's on the website. Yeah, so I look forward to seeing you then, if not sooner. So thank you very much, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.